Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here at my next Attack on Titan Season 2 episode review. This one's going to be for episode 9, which is called Opening. And overall, I wasn't particularly impressed by this episode, just because I felt like it was by the end, it really was just, 20 minutes of just, a few characters talking. And then that in itself isn't a bad thing. If you have just 20 minutes of really, really good dialogue that gets a lot done, that is perfectly fine. The problem with this was that they had 20 minutes of dialogue and barely accomplished anything, which I think is just one of those mistakes that you just shouldn't make in a show. And I get that they were trying to tease stuff for the future and that they kind of were getting it to a point where they realized, okay, Eren and Ymir can't run away because of the situation they're in, but they spent so long. They spent the first 10 minutes of the episode, that's including the intro and stuff like that. The first 10 minutes of this episode simply explaining to us in excruciating detail why Eren shouldn't Titan transform. And I get why he wanted to Titan transform, because he's so upset at Reiner and Bertholdt after the reveal came out. But just very quickly tell us why he can't do that and then get on with the episode. That was the problem with this episode in nearly everything they tried to address in the dialogue here. They just were oddly vague and not necessarily overly clear with what they were trying to get across. Even the Reiner split personality thing, which is probably the biggest reveal of this episode, why was that not just presented in a clearer fashion? I don't know if it was the translation or if this is a very direct translation that just happens to be based on very, very kind of vague dialogue. I like the idea of Reiner's split personality, the idea that there are two kind of parts to him. The warrior, which is basically the side of him that is tasked with, in his Titan form, basically knocking down the walls and accomplishing that goal of, we assume, basically, wiping out humanity. That's the part of him that's now trying to bring Eren and Ymir to where they need to go, to their homeland, and accomplish that. Then there's the soldier part of him, which is basically developed from the amount of time he's basically spent, undercover in the Scouting Legion, in the military, but it's actually become a part of him. So, the little flashback thing of basically what happened to Marco, I think they're obviously alluding to the fact that something happened in the background with Marco. Reiner at some point must have, in his Titan form, done something to Marco, or maybe something like that, or they did something to leave him with the Titans, and that was the warrior in him acting. But at the same time, the soldier in him was like, we're letting one of our comrades die. And it gives insight into, Reiner and Bertholdt as characters, in that, at least Reiner especially, that they do have feelings behind this, especially just with the idea that part of him wants to save his friends and doesn't actually want to kill them, but his mission fundamentally kind of requires him to do all of this. I just felt like the dialogue didn't maybe go in the direction I thought it would, and they ended up just in this weird situation where Eren is trying to be calm so he heals quicker, but ends up just screaming and roaring at Reiner and Bertholdt. And I like it because it gets across how betrayed he is by the two of them. It just, to what end here? In that, Ymir, I think, is probably the biggest kind of what is she doing in this episode? In that so much of her dialogue as well is vague, and that she clearly, of all of them, probably knows the most about what's going on here. Given that, obviously, her reveal as a Titan is arguably the more mysterious one in a way than the others, just because of little bits and pieces we know about her Titan. And just the fact that she isn't aware of what's going on here, but then of course you have the character aspect of her, of they kind of use Krista to basically in a way control her here, and that this is her weakness, that they can just bring up Krista, and that suddenly takes out the really intelligent Ymir from a lot of the situations, and that they have that kind of over her in a way. It just, again, is like, we end this episode in basically the same position as we started. It's just that, okay, we now know Reiner's a split personality, and Ymir is definitely, I suppose, questioning her initial reaction, which was potentially to heal up and maybe her and Eren escape, and is now like, wait, what's actually going to happen here? What's the best way to approach doing this with the aim of ultimately protecting Krista? It just, for me, ended up as an episode where, like, there's so few episodes this season. Why did we spend so much of one of those valuable episodes, basically smashing into the ground the details around, like, two conversations which could have been very, very, basic and to the point. On the other side of the episode, we did have little moments like Hanji basically really wanting to go investigate Connie's town. Clearly some idea has been sparked, and that she must have obviously figured out what I think the audience has figured out, that the Titans, came from that village, and that Titan shifting isn't just this really rare thing. It's actually way more common than you'd think. So that probably is some sort of a reveal that will come out at some point. We see the scouts in formation heading towards, obviously, the forest where Reiner and everyone is. And basically it's just, okay, Erwin is leading them, and Mikasa's trying, kind of forcing it again. And we just get a quick scene with Hannes and kind of move on. Again, this is why the majority of the episode was talking in the trees, not really accomplishing all that much. And, like, again, I didn't, like, hate this episode. It was just, like, you have, when you commit to doing such a heavy dialogue-focused episode, and then just basically end up, like, I wouldn't even say this is one of those episodes where, like, oh, I now have so many more questions than I had before going in. No, I just have the same questions. It also is, I also have, like, two or three little reveals along with that. You still fundamentally haven't answered the questions that we really want to know, in that, like, what is the mission of, the Titans, now that we know that the whole crashing through the walls was a plan that had to have come from humans to a degree. What is the aim of whatever's happening here? Like, that's the ultimate goal to get to, but how exactly are we going to go about that? And then the other thing, I think, is just, are we really going to attempt to in any way, like, redeem Reiner and Bertolt, or are we literally just kind of treating them as kind of villains now, and basically expecting the next time a fight happens, either or one of them to be taken out at some point by a Mikasa, a Levi, an Erwin, or someone like that? That's what's, I think, confusing here, in that it's just so vague the way everything's being presented. But yeah, I'm just going to end the video there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Did you like this episode? Do you think I'm wrong about what I've said about this episode and not liking it as much as other episodes? But definitely leave me some comments about that, your opinions on the episode and what I've said here. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.